Welcome to our athletics webinar. Today we'll be discussing all different levels of athletics on campus, from varsity, club to intramural. So we'll start from with intros from each of our ambassadors to kind of give you some insight into what each of us do, and then we'll talk about the different types of athletics offered at RPI. So be sure to check out that message from Ariana, our admissions event coordinator, in the chat box on the side of your screen. You guys can send some questions in and we'll take them at the end once Ariana approves them for us to see. So with that being said, we can get started. So my name is Grace. I just graduated with my BS in chemical engineering this past Saturday, but I'll be continuing my education at RPI to earn my master's in mechanical engineering this fall. I'm involved in the dance team. I'm currently the captain of the team, and it falls under the category of club sports. So just to kind of give you an idea of my sport and what it's like, we practice 3 times a week, and we also have team lift sessions outside of practice. We hold auditions in the fall, typically the first week that you come to campus, and we mainly focus on jazz, pom, and hip hop. We perform at home football and basketball games. You can see some of those pictures there on my slide. We started competing about 5 years ago, the year before I joined the team. We compete both regionally and nationally on the UDA and NDA circuits, if anyone's familiar with that. We also compete nationally on the NDA circuit in Daytona Beach, Florida every year. So if you've ever seen that Netflix show Cheer that they have, that's the same competition that we attend. So those are those pictures that you'll see in the bottom corner of my slide. Unfortunately, we couldn't compete this year due to the coronavirus restrictions, but in 2019, we placed 4th and 5th in the country in our division for pom and jazz, which is exciting because relative to a lot of the other schools competing at this competition, we're a newer program. But overall, I truly enjoy being involved in athletics on campus. It's a great way to relieve stress outside of class and meet new people, and it's definitely challenging. So I highly recommend joining a club sport or team or any of the intramurals that we have available. So with that, I will pass it off to Becca.
Hi, everybody. My name's Charlie. I am from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm a year younger than Becca in the class of 2021, but like her, I am an industrial and management engineering major. So I'm a member of the men's varsity soccer team here at RPI. We had a great year this year. We're ranked number 4 in the country at one point and ended up going all the way to the Elite 8 of the NCAA tournament. I think I'm the only fall athlete in the webinar, so my schedule is a little bit different to Becca's. I show up a couple weeks early along with the rest of my team, obviously, for preseason. So that usually starts in mid-August. And then our season runs through usually late November or even into early December if we do well. And then much like the other athletes you hear from, we have off-season activities, conditioning, things like that. So in addition to working as an admissions ambassador, I also just finished up a co-op at a consulting firm in Boston, where I had a great sort of opportunity to go and apply the academic skills I've learned at RPI. Actually got a full-time offer there, and then get to hopefully come back and enjoy my senior season and try to grab that national championship. So I will go ahead and pass it on to the next person.
Okay, hi, I'm Kyra. I'm class of 2022 from Orlando, Florida. I'm on the NCAA varsity swimming and diving team. So we're a winter sports. Our on-season time is in both semesters. We start the end of September and go until the end of February for Liberty League championships. We travel pretty far through up to about Ithaca, and then we go to MIT every year. So we swim MIT, NYU, a bunch of schools like that in December. And then we get to go on a training trip to Puerto Rico every January for a week before school starts as a whole team and train there. And then we have some other off-season activities too when we aren't in those times. I'm also involved in Red and White organization, Greek life, and I have a work study and I'm an admissions ambassador. So I can pass it to the next.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm also the class of 2022, and I'm from Ridgewood, New Jersey. So I'm on the club volleyball team, and I have a dual major, so I find it really easy to balance everything. We practice twice a week, so we practice late at night, I think 8:30 to 10:30, and then we also have like an open gym for everyone else. We have tryouts in the fall and sometimes in the spring. It depends on whether or not our team is full. We also have like kind of a practice team. So half of our team will go to competitions and we play other schools in the area like Skidmore and Siena. And then we also go to different tournaments. We've gone to Syracuse, Stevens, places in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts as well.
So now we'll have our varsity athletes talk a little bit more about their sports and just varsity sports in general.
Sure thing. Becca, you wanna take the lead on this one?
Yeah, sure. So RPI has 23 varsity sports. 21 of them compete at the Division III level, and then 2 of them compete at the Division I level, and that's men's and women's ice hockey. So you probably got the gist from all of us, but for the most part, we practice or compete 6 out of 7 days a week. And then in the off season, there are also time commitments, whether that's working on your own or lifting. Like I said, the women's lacrosse team does lift all fall, even though we're a spring sport. And we do have things like captain's practices, stuff like that. If anyone else wants to talk particularly to their sport in the off season.
Yeah, so I think just the biggest difference that you'll probably hear between varsity sports and other levels of athletics at RPI is just sort of the time commitment. And then also, I mean, there is a talent level difference, but I think the biggest thing is time. So I think most athletes at RPI are usually training in their sport year round. For example, the guys on the soccer team, even when it's the middle of winter, we're playing indoor soccer. We're outside on the fields during the spring. There is lifting and conditioning, and you'll have programs for that during the summer as well. So we do take athletics pretty seriously at the varsity level at RPI, and I think that's definitely reflected in the time commitment. But I would also say that our coaches are very understanding, and that coaches and professors are both willing to work with you to make sure that you can get all of your academic work done and still have like a good academic experience that gets you ready for life after RPI while being in a really competitive athletic environment.
Yeah, and the varsity teams, when they're training in the off season and during their regular season, we train with the athletic training staff. So we have like a weight room trainer and like special programs that we go to, which is the difference between varsity sports versus other levels of sports. And that's usually a year-round commitment that you do even in the off season.
Okay, I guess we can pass it over to club sports.
Sure thing.
So we have 52 club sports. You can see some of them listed here. Both Olivia and I are involved in different club sports. Just to kind of talk generically about them, there's a wide variety, and it does tend to be less of a time commitment than the varsity sports that RPI has to offer, and you can check them out at our activities fair in the fall. All the different clubs and the athletic club teams come, and you can check them out. And if you're interested in trying something new, that'd be a great way to talk to the people on the team and kind of see if it's something you'd be interested in. Olivia, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, they tend to be a lower time commitment, which is really nice, and it gives you a really good opportunity to balance your academics while still continuing to play a sport. And you do play competitively. You compete against other schools who are on a club team, which is really fun. And like I know for volleyball, we have like a policy where you can miss up to 3 practices just for like personal reasons. Like if you have a ton of exams that week or you've just been having a really tough week, you can just say, hey, like, look, I can't make it to practice tonight. So it's definitely a lot better if you know, just especially when you're just starting out. Like it's nice to kind of ease into the time balance of college.
All right, so now we'll pass it over for the intramural sports.
Okay, so I can start with this one. I think it's funny. We all also play intramurals.
Yeah.
So intramural sports are kind of as time commitment heavy as you want them to be. So I know there are some teams on campus that go really hard and they hold practices. It depends kind of on what division and league you participate in. I know the women's lacrosse team has an intramural soccer team. We just show up. We don't practice at all. We're pretty bad, but if you want to try really hard, you can. And that's totally fine. Like I said, it's kind of as much time as you want to put into it. There are different leagues, there's different divisions, so we're in the lowest division, which is fine. It's perfect for us. I know Charlie plays and they're in the highest division, which like is more appropriate for them. Yeah, it's really just kind of as much of a time commitment as you want. For us, it's just 1 hour a week. It's just a good time. We just go kick around a soccer ball and are really bad at it. Yeah, if anyone else wants to talk about their intramural experience.
I also play intramural soccer with my team at the lowest division, and we also don't practice at all. We just sort of show up, and it's super like low key. If you are doing homework, you don't have to come. Just however many people show up, and then we play, and we always have a super great time, and we always lose. But the game is really fun, and it's cool to like interact with the other teams and play against other sports teams, because usually I would never play against like the lacrosse team like Becca was saying, but in intramural sports that sort of thing happens, swimming versus lacrosse, or we play like the ROTC team, and it's just fun to interact with other people.
Yeah, definitely. That's what's great about intramural sports, that sort of you can put as much commitment and have as sort of like the way that you're having fun is determined by you. So like, for example, the men's soccer team always plays intramural ice hockey every winter. And we're very bad, and very few of us can skate at all. Like one of our guys like always dresses up in a suit like the coach. We have a lot of fun with that. And then there are some serious like intramural sports. Like I think there's a lot of kids on campus who are pretty good at basketball.
Yeah.
And some of the upper level intramural basketball games get pretty feisty. But I think just in general, it's a good way to have fun with your friends, and like Kyra was saying, interact with people that you like might not ordinarily see that much around campus on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think the next section is some Q&A.
All right, so now we're going to touch on some questions that you guys sent in before the webinar, and then we'll take some of the ones that are in the chat box. So to start off with the first question, could you explain the process of getting on the team and how it fits in with class schedules? I think that's probably geared towards varsity sports, if you guys want to talk about that.
Most people that play varsity sports, usually you start the process of getting on the team while you're still in high school. So personally, I went on a recruiting trip to RPI my senior year to meet the team and the coaches and figure out if it was a good fit for me, and just like go tour the school and all the normal college admissions type of thing. And then how it fits in with your class schedule. It's super easy to work with your coaches for the most part. And for swimming, we have conflict practices as well. So if you have a class that you absolutely need to take and it's during the time you were supposed to lift or the time you were supposed to have a sprint practice, then there's another smaller group of people that have conflicts that can make up the practice with the coaches at a later time that day.
One of the really, really nice things about being a varsity athlete, I will say, is that you do get first priority for picking during your season. So that helps sort of minimize conflicts that you'll run into because you have that opportunity to like structure your academic schedule around when your practices are going to be. And then the other thing that we can talk about with that is like away games. So you have away games like people who are in the Liberty League will have to go to Clarkson and St. Lawrence, which are like 5 hours away, and it's not that fun of a trip. But like you just have to communicate with your professors about missing class and all that stuff, and professors will be fine with it just as long as you take initiative and communicate with them ahead of time.
Also, just going joining the team isn't hard at all. You pretty much just reach out to the coach, and you can find every coach's contact information on the RPI Athletics website. And you pretty much just reach out. I know times are kind of weird right now. They can't really come see you play at like tournaments. But if you just reach out and let them know you're interested, I know the women's lacrosse coach is working with recruits right now. So I would definitely just put yourself out there. We also do take walk-ons. I know the women's lacrosse team has a handful of walk-ons. So those are people who weren't necessarily recruited, but coach was aware when they got to campus freshman year that they were interested in joining. And every team does host tryouts. So you're more than welcome to walk on, and a lot of walk-ons do make huge impact on rosters. So if that's the route you want to go, I would definitely recommend it. I think everyone's always looking for talent. So I don't think anyone, it's not hard to join a team if you want to.
All right, so let's move on to our next question. Can you explain how you balance athletics and academics? So I'll just give a quick note on that. For me, at least, I use a lot of Google Calendar, and it's in whenever I have practice, whenever I have lifts, so I know ahead of time and I can keep track of it. And to be honest, I think it kind of keeps me on track because I know, let's say I get out of class at 4 o'clock and I have practice from 8:30 to 10:30 at night, that I know I have that window in between where I have to eat dinner and get work done. So it kind of forces you to stay on a schedule, and the time management skills that you develop over the years will make it easier in your later years. But if you guys want to add to that.
No, I mean, I think that sums it up well. Definitely. I think honestly that like being an athlete has helped me sort of focus my schedule. It's honestly like our off season when I have a little bit more time, sometimes I find myself getting like really lazy and putting assignments off. But like when you do have that sort of like scheduled commitment, you have to be really good about like scheduling your homework and stuff to make sure that like you have enough time for all the other things that you have to do. It is hard work, but it's very, very doable. And a lot of years, like they usually compare the student athlete GPA to the student body GPA, and they're usually about the same. Student athletes, even a tiny bit higher.
All right. So the next question is, I'm interested in the ROTC program, but I'm concerned about balancing it with academics and athletics. Would you please be able to speak about what that might look like? So do we have anyone on our panel that's a part of that or can speak to that?
My team, since I've been there have been 3 different, my team's really big because it's men's and women's swimming and diving. We all sort of practice together as one team. So there's usually about 60 of us, and the 2 years I've been on the team, we've had a total of 3 people that did both. And it is tough for them, and a lot of times they find themselves getting like a bit more fatigued because they have to do their workouts and also our workouts. So it can be really challenging, but if you're the right person and you're disciplined, you definitely can do both. I think it depends on the sport and how much they're willing to work with your schedule, but I would not rule it out. I think it's definitely possible, and I've seen other people do it. So.
All right, thanks, Kyra. All right, our next question is, what is the comparative intensity of Rensselaer competitive athletics? That is, how high do the teams of this institute usually score? How skilled, fast, strong, and so on must I be to effectively compete? So I think we have a wide range of year, and it really depends on what sport you're trying to play and at what level you want to play it. Does anybody want to add?
I can just add to it a little. The sports at RPI are pretty serious. At the varsity level, we do have a ton of teams that are nationally ranked, which is really, really cool. Especially if you have such intelligent people on those rosters, it's really cool to have people that are really intelligent and they're also, putting in the work on the field. But that doesn't mean that, like I said before, like everyone can join if you're willing to put in the work. I think every team would be happy to have you.
All right, so we can start with the questions that we have in the chat. The first one is, are most tournaments meets held regional, or are there some hosted different countries? May vary for sport, but in general, how often are they held?
So I can take part of this one. So I think that most of our events are going to be somewhere within kind of like the New York tri-state area. So there's a lot of games in New York State, and then you'll have like occasional contests in Massachusetts or things like that. As far as going abroad, the way it works for soccer is you're allowed to go on like an abroad trip once every 4 years. So this spring we were planning to go to Costa Rica for like 10 days, and you go down there and you play games and do a little bit of touring and just get to spend time down there as well. Since we got that postponed because of Corona, we're also looking at going to Spain for like Christmas or something like that. So you will get an opportunity to go abroad probably. But also part of that is fundraising. So like our team does a lot of fundraising to be able to go abroad. And I know like Becca's team is always fundraising for something. So yeah, that's a big part of getting to go to some of the to go to.
All right, so the question from Megan is, do you have dance team as a sport? So I think that one's for me. We don't have dance team technically as an athletic sport, but we do have dance team and dance club, which are both considered club sports. Dance team is competitive, and we perform at the basketball and football games, whereas dance club has a recital at the end. They have a showcase, I believe, in the end of the spring semester. And it's not competitive, and you don't have to audition. So people of every level, from beginner to advanced, can join that, and they have lots of different types of dance styles, hip hop, jazz, ballet, lyrical, whereas dance team mainly focuses on pom, jazz, and hip hop. So the next question is, I currently play soccer, basketball, and run track. Is it possible to play more than one sport a year? How would that affect you academically?
I can take this question. I only play one sport, but we do have a woman on the lacrosse team who is also on the field hockey team. So it overlaps like a little bit. She doesn't play fall ball with us because field hockey is a fall sport. So it overlaps a little bit just with things like that. But you stay with your sport that's in season. But she's a junior and she still has a 4.0. So it's definitely possible. Obviously, she's very intelligent, but I think if teams are definitely willing to work with you. And I know for me personally, my GPA is better in season. So it might be better to have, a lot of structure. So it's definitely possible. I know a ton of people do play multiple sports.
I also think it depends on like the seasons of the sports you're talking about. So like swimming is a winter sport, and on our team we have people on the track team, so that's a spring sport. So it kind of works that they end up having the time that they can do both. We also have a lot of people on our team that play club sports, club soccer, club rowing. So that's also an option too if you don't want quite the same time commitment for both semesters. But yeah, I think I agree with Becca. Totally possible.
All right, so next is, how difficult is it to maintain grades while being committed to a team, varsity, or club? So we touched on that a little bit, but you guys can take it away.
Yeah, I think that just to sort of go back to what I was saying, like it is all about commitment. Just like in your own academic success you are, you're probably going to miss some class time. So like you sort of have to be vigilant around that and making sure that you don't ever get behind. Because like the thing that kills most people in college, if they struggle academically, is getting. So as long as you can keep up with the work as it's coming in, you'll be totally fine. And all that requires is just like looking ahead and being able to plan. You know, like for example, my personal strategy is always to get as much work done like before practice or before a game as I can, because a lot of times we'll practice in the evenings, and then by the time I'm showered and I've eaten, all that I want to do is get in bed, and I don't feel like going to the union and doing homework at 10 p.m. after practice. So like I've sort of made the commitment that, okay, as soon as class is over, I'm going to do my homework for the day, and that way I can go to practice and then go eat with my friends and not even have to worry about it.
I think something else that's important to like remember is that you do have literally a team around you that's all kind of going through the same thing. So like Charlie was saying, it does, it's kind of stinky when it's like 9:30 and you just got home and you just ate dinner and now you do have to go to the union. But usually in the locker room, you're like, so who am I going to see at the union in 20 minutes? And like half the team puts their hand up. So that's like a really great feeling to feel like there's other people in the same boat as you. Yeah, I know also on the women's lacrosse team, we do have study hall once a week for freshmen, and it is monitored or like monitored, proctored. Not really. I mean, we trust them that they go, but we do have upperclassmen that usually attend, and it's really nice because you have people who are older than you that are in the same major, so they've taken those classes and they're more than willing to help you. I'm pretty sure other sports do similar things, but that's just something that the women's lacrosse team does to make sure that that transition is easier because it's definitely different than high school, but it's not impossible. It's definitely doable.
And it's also the type of thing where, especially being on a big team, there's always someone older than me that's taken the class that I want to take or had the textbook that I need. I've personally never bought a textbook at RPI because my team just has so many that we just like pass down and pass around and share. And if I don't know which professor I should take, they usually point me in the right direction or which class might be better which semester. So it's just a really good support system that honestly makes your academic planning go a lot smoother.
I would say 100%. And that goes like one of the most important things you can do, whether or not you're playing a sport at RPI, is like build that support network around you and find other people who are in the same major or have taken the same classes as you, who you can sort of get together with and they can help you. So like, for example, Becca's a year ahead of me in my major, so we've ended up doing like a lot of work together. And she's been like very helpful. So it's pretty easy to reach out and find people around you who are like really nice and really willing to help and are probably going through the same things that you are. Sure, I can take this one as well. So I see a lot of questions in here about like recruiting and admissions. So just to we can kind of address them all at once here, I guess. The admission process works pretty much the same for athletes as for everyone else. Like you still have to get into the school, you still have to have the same grades and the same test scores as everyone else. We're a D3 school with the exception of men's and women's hockey, so there are no scholarships coming down. Like one of the most important things coaches look at you for is your academic performance, because they want high GPAs on their teams, and that's something that's as far as recruiting goes, like the most important thing is probably to be in touch with the coach who you want to play at. I started talking to Coach Clinton probably my sophomore year of high school or my junior year of high school. And we sort of had a dialogue that lasted for a couple of years before I arrived at RPI. That being said, and walk on, all D3 teams are required to have walk-on tryouts. So that is a possibility, but you definitely want the coach to know who you are going into that. Because that's usually who coaches give the most consideration to.
So next we have another question. Does taking a sport at RPI impact the admission rating? So I'm assuming that means like coming into RPI. How does it affect your application? So I know our counselors look for well-rounded students that are involved in extracurriculars outside of the classroom, especially extracurriculars that you show commitment to, so that you've been involved in for a period of time. If you've done it all throughout high school, that's definitely something that they look for. I'm sure Ariana could also touch on that in the chat too. Next is, what is your weekly schedule for varsity swimming? So that's for Kyra.
Yeah, so our in season is pretty much consistent every year. It's from the end of September to the end of February. So every week we lift weights in the mornings on Mondays and Thursdays for an hour. We lift weights and do circuit training at night on Tuesdays for an hour. We have some variation about when your school time would be because our coaches do a really good job of splitting things into different groups so everyone gets like really individualized time. So I do sprint and stroke specialty. So I practice on Tuesday mornings, but it's a really small group on Tuesday mornings for sprint practice. And then Tuesday afternoons I have off, and there's like different practices, but for the most part you will swim at least once a day for 2 hours Monday through Friday, sometimes twice depending on if we have a competition that weekend. Then Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Fridays you might have a double. That doesn't usually happen that often. And then on every Saturday we have a practice that's usually up to 3 hours or a swim meet. Pretty much every weekend on Saturdays. That's most of our like athletic schedule is very consistent, just like that every week.
The next question is also swimming related. If I have swimming experience, but I haven't joined swimming team in high school, am I still able to join swimming team?
Yeah, I think that we have people on our team who swam club in high school and not on their high school team. I'm not sure, but for swimming, it actually is pretty helpful. You can see kind of where you're at, where you would fit in on the team by just looking at our meet results. You can see basically what everyone's times are, and if that like lines up with what your times are, then definitely that would probably be a good fit. So it's really easy to tell with swimming online. Otherwise, just definitely reach out to the coaches. I know Shannon O'Brien is our head coach, and she's always looking for recruits to talk to. Or again, like how Becca and Charlie were saying, walking on for D3 is always a really good option. Our team has 3 walk-ons on it. I'm pretty sure on the women's team, and maybe more on the men's team, I'm not sure. But that's definitely always a good option too. So there's like, you definitely have a possibility. It's really just see where you fit in the team, and if it's a good fit, then I'm sure the coaches would be happy to take you.
Great, thanks, Kyra. Next is, I'm very interested in running at RPI. How do I go about being recruited? So I think Charlie may have touched on this, but maybe you guys can talk more about that.
Sure. So yeah, like I said, oh, sorry, go ahead, Becca. Are we going to take this?
You're good.
So yeah, like I said, get in touch with the coach, probably like your junior year. Running, I think, like swimming, is one of those sports where, because like you will have times that are recorded and they're the same for everybody, a coach will often tell you, we'll just ask like, what are your times? I have a lot of friends on the cross country team, and like I've kind of heard that that's how it works, is like that's a big part of what you're going to be recruited off of. So I would just recommend like trying to get good race results and then reaching out to the coach, giving them your times, and hopefully you can go from there.
All right, next question is, are the facilities for sports far from the dorm and campus? And I know that probably depends on the sport. At least for dance team, we use the Mueller Center, which is located next to our student union, which is kind of in the center of campus, especially near the freshman dorms. And we also use ECAV, which is East Campus Athletic Village, which is about maybe like a 10-minute walk up the hill from where the main part of campus is, but that's mainly used for varsity sports. Do you guys want to touch on where your fields are? I guess how close they are.
So women's lacrosse, most sports play at East Campus Athletic Village, the varsity level ones, but there are dorms up there. So freshman year, I lived in Bar H Residence Hall, which is literally directly across the street. So it was like a 5-minute walk. So then I did have like a 10-minute walk to class, but I only had like a 2-minute walk to practice. So you can really live wherever you want. You can pick somewhere that's closer to the fields, or you can pick somewhere that's closer to class, but there are shuttles that run all over the place. And also you have upperclassmen who have cars, so they'll pick you up if you end up in a dorm a little further away.
My sport is in the Mueller Center. The pool that the varsity team and the club swimming team uses is the Mueller Center. So my freshman year, I lived in a dorm on Freshman Hill, which is super close to the Mueller Center. We walked right through the back door of the Mueller Center into the pool lobby. It was like a 2-minute walk from my dorm. And then my sophomore year, I lived up at ECAV in Rensselaer housing. And so that was like a 2-minute walk from where we train weights. So our sport is kind of split on our location. I think so is softball and baseball. are the other two that are in multiple locations. But, yeah, I've lived pretty much close to all of them, and like it was never hard to get from place to place.
All right. So next, we have another question about how the recruiting process works. I think we kind of covered that, so we'll move on to the next one with how flexible are coaches with study abroad commitments for school. So has anyone done co-ops or study abroad that can talk about that?
I went on co-op the fall of my junior year, so I was off campus. I happened to live close enough. I was on co-op in Albany. So that's a co-op, just for anyone who doesn't know, is you take a semester off of school and then you work. So you get to work for 6 months, which is great because it's a little bit longer than an internship. So I was on co-op, and sometimes I could make it to our fall ball practices and lifts, depending on how what my work schedule was. But sometimes I couldn't, and that's a great part about D3. And similarly with study abroad, we have girls on our team that we had a girl last year go to Singapore during her fall season, or during our fall season, which is not our traditional season. So it's definitely possible. I think coaches are always looking. I think like a big thing about D3 sports is that we're not just athletes. Like we do a lot of other things on campus, and again, a great part about D3 is that you get to have a full college experience. So if you want to go study abroad, I mean, it might be hard if there's a winter sport, so like you kind of lose half your season. But if you're like a fall sport like curling or a spring sport like me, you definitely can use that other semester to do whatever you want. And I don't think I've ever heard of a coach tell somebody no, as long as they weren't missing their traditional season.
Yep, I would definitely agree with what Becca said there. I think coaches are always supportive of study abroad or co-ops and things like that. I think that like you do also have to make a commitment to your sport though. So like I was in Boston this spring doing a co-op there, but I made sure that I found actually multiple different soccer teams to play for while I was there because I knew that back in the fall, having not played for 9 months, because that just makes it a lot harder for the team to accomplish their goals and for me to accomplish the goals I want to hit during the season. So it like everything else, it's a balance, but definitely you can go abroad, you can experiences.
Yeah, and for winter sports, you're not required to take any semesters off during your 4 years, so you don't have to, but if you want to, we have people that do that. And just this past year, we had a diver study abroad in South Korea for the fall semester, and what he ended up doing is just redshirt or taking off a year of his eligibility so that he could not compete for the entire year that he was going to be abroad, and then he could save a year of eligibility to compete a 4th year while he was getting his master's degree. So it sort of worked out that way as well, that you can sort of arrange your schedule of which years you compete to fit into your study abroad program.
All right, next we have a question. Are students able to try out for varsity sports, particularly cross country and track, the start of their freshman year, or is it required to have been in contact with a coach starting from high school?
I can take this one. I think, like, how Charlie was saying, fall sports do come back a couple weeks early. I think it's just like 2 weeks. So if you came with the rest of the freshman population, you might miss that window to try out. So I think Ariana posted the link to the athletics website. I would just recommend just shooting the coach an email just so that they're aware that you're looking to try out. Just so they can get you on the email list so that what's going on. But yeah, you don't have to be Charlie said he was in contact for a year or so. I was too, but that definitely doesn't have to be the case. But yeah, so if you just shoot them an email, just so you're kind of in the loop, and then you can try out. You don't have to be in contact for a really long time.
All right, next for Kyra, how often do you have swim meets during the week?
Most of our competitions are on Saturdays, so we have only about 10 dual meets during the year, and then we have, in addition to that, invitational. But almost all of them are on Saturdays, so it's just once a week. And then I think 2 times during the season we'll have a double meet weekend. So one of them is a Friday and a Saturday, and one of them is a Saturday and a Sunday. So we just do back-to-back only 2 times just to prepare us for what an invitational or a championship meet is, so we kind of remember what that feels like. But all the other weekends we have meets, it's just 1 swim meet per week.
Our next question is, what percentage of varsity athletes and separately club athletes are involved in Greek life? Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact numbers for athletes in Greek life, but in general, about 30% of the students are involved in Greek life, and I believe upwards of 80% are involved in either intramural club or varsity sports on campus. So there's a lot of students involved in the different levels of sports, and although Greek life doesn't dominant campus is an option, and there are a lot of athletes that are part of Greek classes on campus. They want to add to their experience.
I mean, I can only speak for my team. I'd say we probably have 35-40% of our team is in Greek life. You know, some of the fraternities will sort of be like they have people from certain teams on them. But there's absolutely no expectation that you have to be in a fraternity or a sorority if you're on a team. I'm not in a fraternity. I just didn't feel like it. It just wasn't quite right for me. And there's no judgment for anything like that. And honestly, that I found that your team is a tight enough group that you may not feel like you need it, but it's certainly an available and doable option if you do want it.
All right, thanks, Charlie. Next one, is it possible to double major and be a student athlete? Is anyone here a double or dual major? No. Typically, though, at RPI, we have less students doing a double major versus a dual major. Double is where you take all the courses from both of those sets of the curriculum for both majors, whereas dual has some overlap, which is why there's some more common dual majors, so you'll see that more often. And you still have time. I do have some roommates that are involved in dual majors that do play club and intramural sports. Like we've said, it's definitely a time commitment to do varsity sports as well as some of these other sports. So it might be challenging, but it's something you can talk to the coaches about and some other upperclassmen that have had experience doing that before. Our next,
a person on my team is a double major actually, I think, and he graduated in 3 years with a 4.0 and was a captain and then just got his master's degree. So he is definitely really, really smart. I don't know if I could do exactly what he did, but there are a bunch of people out there that do it. So yeah, it's definitely an option.
all right, next one is, so does everyone go to the union to do their homework? I think we kind of all talked about it because that is one of the most central locations on campus. We have a shuttle that stops there, so if you're working on group projects, it's an easy place for most people in your group to access. There's lots of places to eat in the union as well, which makes it a very appealing option. There's also the library. You can study really anywhere on campus. Most of the buildings are open at many hours of the day, so it's really up to you. I'm sure everybody has a favorite study spot that might not be the union. Do you guys have team study spots that you guys like to go to?
And the women's lacrosse team is usually at the union. It's kind of nice because I can walk in at any point, and I know I don't need to look for a table because I know someone's already there sitting at one, which is nice. We're typically in the union. But I know some teams we do have rooms up at the East Campus Athletic Village, which some teams do use. I know the women's lacrosse team has a house together, and our dining room table is also a popular spot. So really anywhere. I think a lot of teams can go together and then keep a place that works for them.
Yeah, my team has a separate team study room since we have sort of our whole little pool area that's separate from the other sports. So we just redid it, so we have really, really nice new tables and chairs, and pretty much at all times there's like a group of people in there that are just kind of hanging out on the couches, and then someone is studying in there pretty much from like 8 a.m. to midnight every day. So it's just a really like quiet place also. So your teams will usually have, like Becca was saying, another place that's sort of like just for them to study. And then also in the union is pretty much where I go most of the time.
All right, next is it possible to join other clubs such as orchestra or choir while being a student athlete?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I have a couple of friends that are in, so actually the women's soccer team I know is like instrumental in running the Soul Survivors Club on campus. So that's a club to raise awareness for victims of sexual assault, and they do a couple of really cool fundraisers and events during the year. So that team is like heavily involved in that, and their team is very, very passionate about clubs and social justice and things like that. On my team, there are some people involved with Engineers Without Borders, a couple that work with Habitat for Humanity, and then a bunch that do sort of community service out of their fraternity. So yeah, definitely possible to get involved with a club or something that you're passionate about in addition to your sport and school.
Yeah, I think going off of that, the women's lacrosse team is huge with Colleges Against Cancer, and we pretty much run RPI's Relay for Life. So a majority of the executive board are pretty much all women's lacrosse players, because that's kind of just an organization we found that we were passionate about. And then something like totally not service related, like I was a biology teaching assistant for 3 semesters. I'm not a bio major, like it's just something I enjoyed. I took bio, I liked the class. So just because you're a student athlete, like you can do other things. It's definitely possible. You do have free time, like it'll be okay. But yeah.
All right, so we also have some links that Ariana put in the chat to answer some of your questions. You also have the contact info there if you're looking for it. Our next question, though, is which dorm hall is best for freshmen if you're doing a varsity sport?
I can take this one. I think it kind of depends. So for me, I picked Bar Residence Hall, which was right next to East Campus Athletic Village. That was just a personal choice. That's just the dorm that was for me. There are some on Freshman Hill, though, which is like a cluster of freshman dorms just a little bit further down the hill. We had freshmen on our team that lived there this year. That way it's a closer walk to class. It really just depends on, what's for you. So really any dorm.
Yeah, my freshman year, I lived with 1 lacrosse player and 1 softball player together in Barton Hall, which was one of the newer dorms on Freshman Hill. So it was nice because it was right next to the dining hall. So we all wanted to spend a lot of time eating in the dining hall. And then it was really close to the pool. It was really close to the softball field. And then we all lifted at the same location, obviously not at the same times, but the Freshman Hill is pretty central. So you're not going to have a problem wherever you live. My team also has like a tradition of all living in Hall, which I didn't do because I lived with people on other teams. But I think some of the other teams have similar things. So it just, if you want to like room with someone that is going to be on your same team, then you guys might get a recommendation of which hall to live in if it's like a tradition to have a certain hall or floor or something like that.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing, and this goes for athletes and non-athletes, is just like finding a good group of people to live with. So I know that, the freshmen who came a year behind me lived in E-complex, but they completely took over 1 floor of the dorm, and it was just them. So they just turned it into their pad and had a fantastic time the whole year there. So really you can make wherever work as long as you've got good, fun people around you.
All right, next is, so in order to commit to a varsity team, you have to get into the school first, or does the coach have a say in your commitment when applying to the school?
I can take this one. So coaches pretty much have no say at all. Athletes apply the same way that everyone else does. The only thing that's a little bit different is that you will send the way I did it was, and this was 4 years ago, so maybe it changed. But I would send my coach, my senior year of high school, I sent her my transcript, everything that you would normally send to admissions. And she kind of just handed it to me and was like, if she did apply, usually, like, would she get in? And it's not an acceptance. It's nothing like that at all. And they could just say, yes, she is a good candidate, a good application. She would probably get in if she did apply, or, they would say, no, she didn't. And then I apply the same way everyone else would. And then once I get accepted, then I become a member of the women's lacrosse team. So, people will like post that they committed and stuff for D3. You can commit, but it's not official until you get an acceptance letter. All it is that if you did apply, you would probably get in. That's the only difference, is that you kind of get like a preview.
Yeah, I would agree with what Becca said, and also say that like it's kind of a weird dance the way the two things work together sometimes. Like a coach can tell you, I think you would really have a spot on this team. It's just a matter of you getting in. But then, of course, like spots aren't guaranteed on Division III teams. So we've had people come in who were recruited their freshman year and not make the team. Now we are like a very competitive team, and so that sort of thing like can happen. But I would say the two things like usually come together, and you kind of get like an overall understanding of like, okay, I'm in, like I've talked to my coach, I know I'm going to be part of the team, and then you kind of get a sense that it's done, but like the two don't necessarily directly relate to each other. You could commit after you get accepted, you could get accepted after you've committed.
Okay, next a question from Trent. Do you know if there's any youth ice hockey in the area? I'm a level 4 official and would like to keep my job when I go to college. Does anyone have any experience or know anything about that?
Positive, but I do know that I know at least the women's ice hockey team does run clinics and stuff. I assume the men's ice hockey team does also. I just know for a fact the women's team does, and I know they also do a lot, kind of like I mean, I guess that's clinics is teaching ice hockey. But I would assume that there is. So hopefully you can keep your job.
Yeah, I would say talk to like your state association. So I'm a soccer ref, and I'm licensed in Maryland. But when I came up to college, I talked to like the New York state assigner, and just like told him my situation and that I was coming up, and then I was able to ref games in New York once I got up here. So I would say that like that would probably be the conversation to have.
All right, next, how's the food on campus?
Okay, I can take this. I think the food on campus is good. We have a ton of different dining halls. There's a ton of different options. I also see further down someone's asking about allergies. One of my roommates is gluten-free, nut-free, fish, pretty much everything. She's literally allergic to everything. And there are special rooms on campus where you can go and like meet with a dietitian. And they do have like, also we are a nut-free campus, which is good to know. But yeah, they do a phenomenal job. I think the food is great. And if you do have any allergies or dietary restrictions, we do have dietitians that can meet with you. That's not just for student athletes, that's for everybody. So that, you know, they make sure you are eating and that you have things that you like and that you can literally eat. We also do have a new thing. They just redid Commons Dining Hall. It's beautiful. And they do have a station where they bring chefs in and they teach you how to cook, and you can cook with them in there, which is really great because then when you move off campus and you don't have a dining plan anymore, you know how to cook. Yeah, there's tons of different options, whether you have food allergies or not, and the food's pretty good.
Yeah, and also in my experience, the dining staff is really willing to be accommodating. So my freshman year, I was sort of feeling like I wasn't getting enough protein, and I ended up emailing someone that was on the dining staff, and I was like, hey, can we have more chicken, please? And then the next day, there were 3 chicken options, and it was really great. So they're super receptive of like anything you could ask or want for. Like this year, they have obviously a bunch more protein. They have smoothie stations. They have like veggie plant powered stations, and there's just so many options now. And if you have an idea, they're really receptive to like something else you might need.
Yeah, I think even over my 4 years being here, I've seen them make a lot of different changes and things for students, and they've added more over the years. They have bar hop at the dining halls on Wednesdays, which is like a smoothie bar, a brownie bar, a sundae bar. So the menu is always changing, and I don't think I ever ate like the same thing twice in the month because the menu is just always different. So the food is good is our answer. And our next question is, how do you think coronavirus will affect sports going forward? I think that's something nobody can really answer right now. At least for club sports, we've been in contact with our SARPs, which is our representative that works in the union, for us to kind of try to plan for the upcoming semesters. But we're still not really sure yet. I think people are still trying to make adjustments. I don't know if any you guys on the Varsity Sports have heard anything yet. I think that's also based on the NCAA.
Yeah, I know. We've been in contact with our athletic director, and it's pretty much the same thing. Like he's like, I'm going to meetings, but every time we go to a meeting, there's new information and everything changes. So I don't think anyone really knows the answer.
Yeah.
So it's really ever changing, but we're still hopeful and kind of moving forward, hoping for a regular season. But I guess we'll have to wait and see in the fall when we get back. And also, Dan, if you didn't see in the chat, I think Olivia had an answer to your question there. Our next question, we talked about food allergies. Do any of you know what the hockey player's schedule is like? Where is the rink compared to the dorms?
Yeah, so the hockey rink is right near ECAV. It's like in a building right next to that complex. So it's again a 2-minute walk from the Bar H dorms, probably 10 minutes from Freshman Hill. The hockey players have a little bit of a different schedule compared to us, just because they are D1 athletes. So their demands in terms of training are a little bit more, especially in the off season. They condition and have lifts a little bit more than we do. And their academic experience is, I would say, just, it's a little bit more geared towards their sport than ours is, which isn't to say that D3 athletics isn't serious, and it isn't to say that you can't have a great academic experience playing hockey here. One of my friends is the goalie on the hockey team and is like one of the smartest kids I've ever met, and has like a 3.7 or a 3.8 GPA in, I think, biomedical engineering. So definitely still an opportunity to get a good academic schedule in as a hockey player. But there is a little bit more sort of dedication and commitment to their sport that's required.
All right, thanks, Charlie. So I think we have time for another question or two. The next one is there a big student following when it comes to sports?
I can take that question. So this past year, I was president of our Student Athlete Advisory Committee, which is kind of like student council for athletes. And one of our big kind of like focuses this year was bringing the attendance up at games, because we do have a ton of people that come. But obviously when you see like Ohio State play a football game, it looks a little bit different than like RPI football. And we know we're never going to look like an Ohio State football game, but it would be nice to like fill our stands. So there definitely is a big following. It's really big. You guys have probably heard me like in meetings like preach about it, but like athletes supporting athletes. So that's something huge that we really like strive for. I know I've been to almost every soccer game. The women's lacrosse team works a lot of the football games. We go to all the basketball games, field hockey, women's soccer. So there's definitely a huge student following. And a lot of times too, like we'll come up from practice to cheer on the men's lacrosse team because they're having a game while we're practicing. So our coach will like stop practice and let us go up and like bang on the fence and stuff and cheer for them. So there's definitely a huge following for sports, which is pretty cool.
All right, so also make sure you check out the chat box. Ariana put some links in there.